friends. It's time. It's the end of the year, man. 2024 just blew by. How are you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I think we're all just trying to letting it hang out at the end of 2024.
I mean, you know, it's been a pretty wild year. A little bit of a meager Christmas for me because I've lost all of my money on the Hawk Tuah coin. But I'm hoping maybe we'll get some legal challenges that will help us out.
There was a rally recently because she released a statement, and she's very concerned for all you investors. I love calling people who bought the meme coin investors.
Yeah,
because
that's a very funny euphemism.
Because honestly, it's not that big of a step from what I think those people did to what drives our economy's priorities worldwide. So,
well, if you do want to help myself and Matt out, you can always buy merch at leftreckoning.com/store, pick up one of these hats, or support us on patreon.com/leftreckoning. But enough about my woes and losses after the Hawk Tuah fiasco. Matt, we gotta take a little tour through the year, and for folks who are newer, we do these bum steer of the years, which we have graciously stolen from Texas Monthly Magazine. But it's just to be clear with people about like what our categories are and what drives our decisions here. The bum steer of the year is not the person that we think is the worst, or the person who we hate the most, or even our political enemies, as much as it is just basically like the biggest losers of the year. And they could be losers in the sense of just actually losing, or just creating a huge menace and havoc on society. So we have a few notable candidates here. Last week, as y'all know, we chatted about one of those guys, Matt Iglesias, who did come pretty close, I will say. But we broke that down with Nathan Robinson. So we got some interesting folks for y'all, and we'll take y'all through the honorable mentions before we get to our illustrious bum steer of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a bit of a curveball, but first we want to start with who, David?
Look, this was supposed to be a big year for Texas Democrats. A lot of people were talking a big game about what was going to happen in this state. Ted Cruz, much like Donald Trump, is somebody who, in a lot of ways, should be very beatable. And yet, every single time the Democrats in this state think that they're about to pull one over the Republicans and finally end the decades now long GOP rule and win streak on statewide elections, they lose again. And Colin Allred, I will say, I think does represent one of the worst examples of that. And we'll get into that as to why in just a second. Because look, there have been other people who have run against Cruz or, run for Senate in this dry spell for Texas Democrats here, who were maybe not a good candidate, not particularly inspiring. But Colin Allred really, in many ways, embodied the rod of a certain kind of like Democrat centrism, an over-reliance on a completely disproven political theory, which was the demographics are destiny. And thirdly, as we'll get into, I think most importantly, was a very clear reminder of the fact that a lot of these campaigns, particularly in red states, are just big fundraising operations rather than genuine, attempts at winning political power.
And so much of that is Allred is a Texas microcosm of Kamala Harris, Joe Biden 2024, really.
Mm-hmm.
And the leaning on the certain things, like, okay, he's a former football player or whatever, or she's like, I mean, the complacency and, like you said, the adhering to a playbook that has been just destroyed by Trump twice now.
And also, like, in Allred's case, like a genuine kind of fear of like being popular because, most of the conversations about Allred are all going to be about his biography, right? Why on paper he might seem like a very compelling candidate, because once you see him in person speak, all of the riz and charisma disappears before your eyes. But right, he has a very, very compelling story. He's distantly related to a former Texas governor, like back in the 1800s, and then another side of his family were enslaved in this state, right? Like he really was like has like a very compelling historical narrative to his life. He's somebody who was the captain of the football team at Baylor University, and then was linebacker not only for an NFL team but for the Tennessee Titans, which people might forget. Even though that's in Tennessee, at least has some Texas roots, right? Used to be the Oilers, right? It's like this guy, like in a lot of ways, there's a lot of his biography that seems to set him up for a very successful political career. And again, he was a congressman. And then he gets injured, and instead of just sort of, being down on his bad luck or whatever for the rest of his life, he goes to school, gets a law degree, and works as a voting rights lawyer, and then becomes a political figure, right? So again, somebody who has like at least a somewhat of a compelling narrative around him. And then you see him. We did the debate on the show. People probably watched that. A lot of people did our live stream of that. I mean, he really lacks a kind of killer instinct charisma, and that's not even getting into the policy.
Yeah. Do you think that absence of charisma? Do you think there could have been something there, and once he gets to the political campaign consultant level, they bleach it out of him, or do you just think he's just never had that?
The thing about Allred is that. And that's a good point, because we saw that very clearly with Tim Walz, right? Somebody who they just kind of bleached and just took away anything that made that guy interesting. Allred, I think, is less of somebody who was so crafted by the consultants and more as a representative of somebody that the consultants think is going to be the winner. Because the thing that's notable about Colin Allred, not that it was looking like it was going to be a particularly competitive Democratic Party primary, but it was one of those things. It's similar to like the Bernie, when Bernie first ran in 2016, right? And you know how they just sort of cleared the primary field for Hillary. The Democratic Party leadership in the state of Texas very much tried to clear the field for Allred. There was some people like Roland Gutierrez, who is like more progressive certainly than Allred, and sort of became like the standard bearer of that. But they basically, by the time voting started in the state, it had been sort of settled. The endorsements came out, the money sort of lined up behind Allred. So they basically cleared the field for Allred. And that's because I think that they made a calculation that either they thought that he was going to be the kind of white bread candidate that was going to be able to beat kind of annoying and loud character like Ted Cruz, or, and I think more likely this, that they thought he was going to be able to raise a lot of money. Now, we can never know what's in people's hearts, but we've got to be able to roll the tape back a little bit. Because the campaign was really despicable. And I think it also introduced some people out of the state. Matt, if you could pull up the Canva real quick, outside of the state, to some of the weird machinations that happen within Texas Democratic Party politics. And we have these two tweets, and then we'll get into some of the nuts and bolts about how bad he lost and why he lost in a second. But this is Monique Alcala, who is the executive director of the Texas Democrats. This is a tweet that she made in August, right? So in August, this piece came out. This was a really disgusting moment, I'm going to be honest. In August, the Texas Tribune, which is one of the major publications here in the state of Texas, ran a piece, right? And you can go and read the piece if you want to, but if you just take me at my word, the piece was asking a question that many people in the state were asking. Why is the Colin Allred campaign a couple months before the election sitting on this massive war chest because he raised a lot of money, right? And not doing major campaign events like somebody like Beto O'Rourke, right? Particularly in a presidential election year where you really do, need to be out there and be making the case to people. And this piece in Texas Tribune, it was one of the most I'm not saying this to suck up to the Tribune. It was like one of the most fair-handed versions of that critique. They talked to some people who were upset about it. And then they talked to other people who said, this is why the strategy might work. This is maybe the thought process behind it, right? It was a very, very even-handed piece looking at what was going on. And this is coming from the executive director of the Texas Democratic Party. Quote, "Hi, I'm the ED for the Texas Democrats. Let me set the record straight. No one has invested more in our party than Colin Allred." Very funny now if you've been reading anything in Texas media because it's all knives out for him now. He has done the hard work to win, right? Wrong. He's crisscrossed our state holding events of all sizes, meeting Texans where they are. That's just objectively incorrect. And lastly, Texas is a big state that presents big challenges. Fair enough, whatever. We welcome productive discussions on those. But if you are lying and spreading misinformation about our work to beat Ted Cruz, please sit down. And I found this to be odious. I mean, really odious. To sit here and tell people, that any kind of criticism of this figure is spreading misinformation. I know not to be too rose-colored glasses around the Democratic Party and journalism or anything like that, but I thought the Democratic Party's whole thing post-Trump was like, hey, we stand for truth and for investigative journalism. And this, I think, not only shows like the rot of the Texas Democratic Party, but also kind of weird rot that's going on with Democrats across the country, where they now think the media is out to get them for reporting on how bad the Democratic Party has been at doing politics.
Literally cutting down the things that should advantage them. Like every newspaper endorsed Hillary Clinton, for instance. I'm pretty sure every one of them endorsed Joe Biden. But I do want to circle back to the one truthful thing from that statement, which I think maybe a little bit too revealing. No one has invested more in our party than Colin Allred. Like when it's a fundraising horse, and it kind of like that is acknowledged, I think, subliminally.
Well, we'll get to those numbers in a second, Matt. If you pull up that next slide, there's another tweet that we have to recognize, because this person ended up playing a outsized role in the campaign. Sam Russick, we'll get to his piece in a second, but he notes that regularly reporters who were trying to speak with the campaign from major publications were being directed not to major figures in the Allred campaign, but to a young woman, Olivia Juliana, who people probably have seen on Twitter, being very, very wrong about things, who was 100% a pure just hack at this point, as you said. And this is what she said that same day. Responding to that same piece, anyone saying Colin Allred hasn't intentionally engaged the base or traveled the state is spreading misinformation and frankly helping Ted Cruz's campaign divide the Democratic Party. First of all, the Texas Tribune's job is not to help the Texas Democratic Party win elections. Let's just be clear about that. But the second thing is, no, it is not misinformation. We will get into how many counties and what happened with people who were trying to get Colin Allred to show up across the state. She adds, Allred has done both base mobilization and persuasion. That's what it takes to win. Now, people know he lost, but I want to put this in some historical perspective. Ted Cruz got 53.1% of the vote. Colin Allred got 44.6% of the vote in Texas, right? And this was remember, this is a state where Kamala Harris came and did a big ass rally in Houston days before the final results, which was supposed to be seen and was supposed to show how confident the Democratic Party was that not only they're going to beat Trump, but they might even be able to steal this state from the Republicans, right? This is worse. This is worse than what MJ Hager did back in 2020, who people don't know, which is the point, when they ran against Colin Allred in another presidential election. Cornyn got 52.6% of the vote, while MJ got 45%. And certainly what Allred did was a far cry from what Beto O'Rourke did back in the day, when Beto O'Rourke got 48.3% of the vote to Ted Cruz's 50.9%, right? So all of this fucking big talk from these folks is wrong. And look, I get it. You're working on a campaign, you're supposed to show strength. Not going to fault anybody for saying, I think my guy's going to win the election. But when you're sitting here saying things like, everyone who's criticizing this campaign is a liar, and everything that he's doing is great, shows that you are trying to rebuff any kind of challenge to the strategy that you are putting forward. And people have a right to criticize the Democratic Party when somebody like Allred pulled in as much money. And I'm just going to pull this up for folks, because this is the thing about Allred that really, shows you what this was about. It's from Open Secrets. This is the money and sort of what matters. Ted Cruz raised $104 million, spent around 103. Colin Allred spent raised 92,733 mil, and then spent nearly the same amount of money. Just to put this in perspective, let's just look at another big race. Compare that to Beto O'Rourke. Colin Allred raised more money than Beto O'Rourke did in this race. It was one of the most expensive Senate races ever. So that was the big victory for the Allred campaign. And that's money that's spent on consultants, on ads, on people around the party. So yeah, a lot of people did well. There was a lot of investment, as you said, Matt, but not particularly investment in the base. And let's just pull up this last thing, and then we can.
Well, now what has to happen is ass covering, because what that looks like, or what it objectively is now, is a insecurity, a very insecure campaign. Because if you thought you were you doing actually all that shit, you don't need to comment. You don't need to take swipes at the press. You just go to the next campaign stop. And now it's just like, these are consultants. Like these are like scam artists, basically. Like the amount of money and they're again expecting just to ride into office because of how bad either Ted Cruz is or like, it's crazy how unprincipled
it's worse for these guys, Matt, because not only did they think that they were going to win because of how bad Ted Cruz is, right? They also thought that God had sort of preordained their victory demographically. And this has been one of the most damaging and dangerous things. And I talk about this, one, because I'm a Texan and I care about what happens in our state. But this is also the national strategy of the Democrats is looking more and more like the state strategy of the Democrats in Texas. And I'm here to warn all of y'all outside of the state. This is what they're wanting to do on the national level, and it's a loser, and it will continue to lose, and things will get worse. If you pull up this piece by Sam Russick, who wrote, I think, the definitive take on this election. The real reason Texas isn't turning blue, by Sam Russick. A few years, we're told the Democrats are about to break through in this red state. Here's why they continue to lose. And he notes in this that despite all these claims that he's been crisscrossing the state, Matt, Allred visited just 34 counties out of 254 in the state of Texas. And if you'll pull up this that next bit there, Matt. Sorry, I might need your help to read this because it's a little bit zoomed out on mine. Actually, no, I have it here. Meanwhile, this is from Sam Russick's piece. Meanwhile, Allred's outreach to farmers, who make up 14% of the state's workforce and more than 12% of the United States total, by far the most of any state, was sporadic at best. Clayton Tucker, a rancher and chair of the Lampasas Democratic Party, based in a 712 square mile county with a population of fewer than 24,000, said between the crowded Democratic Party primary and election day, there was, quote, quite a dry spell in communication. Tucker lobbied hard for Allred to appear before farmers and lay out his vision. Finally, in October, weeks away from the election, Allred joined Tucker in Lubbock, a college town just below the Panhandle, for a small roundtable to address their concerns. Quote, that's important work, Tucker seeded, but it's needed to be at scale. And this has been the big defense that we've seen from a lot of these grifters in the Texas Democratic Party, where they will say, oh, well, Colin Allred showed up at a small roundtable with 10 people. And Olivia has noted this time and time again on Twitter that, like, oh, it's just because Colin Allred's like having serious conversations. I'm sorry. This is not like a fucking listening tour. This is a political campaign, and having a conversation with 8 people in like a safe room with rules where reporters aren't allowed in there is not doing voter outreach or base mobilization, right? It's covering your ass so that later when people say, hey, what was going on with your relationship with rural voters in the state of Texas? What was going on with your relationship with Hispanic voters in Texas? They can say, oh, well, he went and he spoke to these 10 people in San Antonio. That's okay. Right? It's just complete bullshit, and everybody should see through it. And it's particularly disgusting to me because Texas is a state that is at the forefront of the right-wing horror scene that we're seeing in this country, right? You see every day more and more horror stories about what's going on with abortion. You're seeing all this fear, rightfully, over what the Trump's promised deportation campaigning will look like. And certainly for trans people, right? There's tremendous worry about whether or not Texas will be a place where people can not just thrive, but continue to be able to live publicly, right? And Allred waged war on the border, right? Said that Joe Biden was weak, and Joe Biden, quote, did open border policies. He aligned himself with Republicans in Congress to send a letter to Joe Biden about his, quote, open border policies. 2, he turned his back on trans rights in the state of Texas almost immediately the second that Ted Cruz started talking about it. And he continued to fail to show up for these kind of bread and butter issues that very clearly matter to a lot of Texans. And what happened with Allred is not only did he lose, right, but they are losing in the communities that are supposed to be their bedrock. They're supposed to be the places that they're building out of to start to win, and they're losing. right? So all these people who are getting paid a lot of money and being invited to the White House and are certainly going to have a long career in Democratic Party politics unless that party changes, right, are full of shit. And they are lying to you, and they are lying to you for one reason, and that's the amount of money that somebody like Allred is able to raise, right? Because that means the lights stay on for them. That means that they get to run campaigns. Hell, they might even be able to travel in nice accommodations on these campaigns that lose by, 10% of the vote, by 10 points when the election day happens. So despite this massive demographic shift that was supposed to change national politics, to not even get into what that would mean for Texas, they are losing with those demographics that were supposed to carry them into statewide victory and from that into national victory. It is egregious. It is dangerous. It is wrong. It is just objectively an incorrect strategy at this point. And these people who continue to demand that we don't talk about the economy, that we don't talk about working class issues, right? And instead continue to hover and surround themselves with people who want to push the most noxious identity politics bullshit are now repudiating those people that they're supposedly supposed to be talking for, because those people are now either not voting or they're voting for the fucking Republican Party. So that's, just for me, I can't tell people how angry I am about it, because I'm furious that progressives in this state have been sidelined by the Texas State Democratic Party. I have horror story upon horror story of what happens when progressives try to get engaged in local politics in the state of Texas, right? There's great exceptions to it. There's a lot of people in Austin and San Antonio and Dallas. I don't need to, people we covered on the show. But the leadership of this party is hostile to those people. And it's very fucking clear that they're hostile to them, and they are running this state into the ground. So whenever you see the Republicans do this kind of fucked up shit, yeah, blame the Republicans. They're nasty. Yeah, totally. But these assholes create the conditions to allow the Republicans to do what they're doing, because this kind of shit doesn't happen in a state that is competitive. It happens in a state that for 30 decades now, the Democrats are nowhere to be seen.
This is fractals, David. Here,
Remind me.
Infinitely reproducing patterns.
Yeah.
Sort of keep going in like this. What you've sort of talked me into, and we have some good contenders coming up. That is just and we've talked about parallels as these campaigns have gone on between Allred and Harris, for instance, but it really is the same fucking problem, just reproduced at a state level. Man.
It is coming naturally. You want to get to the next one?
Yeah.
This one will probably be short because this has basically been what we've been covering for the past month. But the next honorable mention for bum steer of the year is the Democratic Party establishment. And that's everybody from people like Nancy Pelosi to Joe Biden, who's probably and rightfully should go down as one of the worst presidents, not just in our lifetime, but probably in American history.
He will. And I think.
I hope so. I hope that people sort of recognize just how damaging and evil these people are. But this is a party that, again, fumbled the bag, right? Fumbled the ball really in a dangerous way, because it's only empowered and emboldened the far right. Let me pull this one up, because this was a really beautiful, I think, encapsulation of this. You'll see some people we were just talking about here. So remember Hunter Biden, right? Somebody who Joe Biden pardoned after saying that he would not do that. This is a vodka. Snowflake has a good line here. Oh my God, the White House threw a holiday going away party with the resistance grifters and Hunter Biden. Look at my Democratic Party dog. We're getting a third Trump term. And very, could see that. There's Olivia there, who did so much work making sure that the Republicans won the state of Texas. There's some of these other folks, Joe from Jersey, this weird dude from Georgia, I believe, Harry Sisson. Look, these guys are truly despicable. Brooklyn Dad, everyone knows, great Twitter follow.
One of the OG, what was it, in 2016, haters of Bernie bro type guys, wasn't he? Yeah.
And they're paying them. And this is the thing, right, is that sometimes I have a hesitancy to sort of talk about these famous Twitter folks, right? It's like, they're just weird. No. the Democratic Party is giving these people money. I mean, this is their strategy, is to embolden and elevate those people. And, you know, this insane demonstration of just how out of touch the fucking Democratic Party is after losing a historic election, the one that was supposed to be the last chance to save democracy from the far right. They ran a horrible campaign. They squandered insane amounts of money. I mean, we now have Kamala Harris basically asking people to get her out of debt after they wasted their money on that big ass war in Las Vegas. And they're continuing to give those people money and inviting them into the White House. So if you wanted to see, maybe the Democratic Party might sort of learn some lessons after this election. No. They're throwing the ball. They're having a real party, and you're not invited, right? I mean, this is really encapsulates the Democratic Party at this moment.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm glad that Joe and Hunter are going to be able to spend time together. Joe's going to take a little time. But that's the thing about Joe's legacy, you know, to go back to that, he's sandwiched by Trump forever. And that was the only reason he was supposed to be president. And the Middle East blew up. And to the extent that I don't think Trump's exactly going to be able to put all that stuff back in Pandora's box. And to throw a party like that with those hacks, those complete, I mean, I don't even recognize some of them, to be honest.
That's good.
I've seen like the Sisson guy and of course Olivia Giuliani, but like, I think you can find how much Giuliani's been paid by these freaks. And it's like, it's money, but it's not like she's going to retire.
No, it's not that much. Yeah.
These people are cheap. It's so shoddy. And it's like, man, it almost... how is this an improvement on Kid Rock and John Voight? Right?
I mean, at least Kid Rock's got some bangers. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Kid Rock has charted.
My name is Kid.
Ba with the ba. If you forget what the music, if you forget a lot of things, can kind of go still. But yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. But you know.
Yeah. So they have to be on the list. We've done enough of it that we didn't want to bore y'all by doing anymore. But that and I mean, fucking Nancy Pelosi and all the insanity we've just seen in this week. Something else.
Yeah. Two just quick honorable mentions, because I think we're going to talk about them next year, maybe in this exact same session, is Sam Altman, sort of the lead AI guru. I'm ready to call it. That's a bubble. I don't know if it'll pop whenever. I don't make predictions like that, but there's a lot of overinvestment in that and in chatbots and whatever this future thing is, and also, of course, Elon Musk. It feels it's hard to put him on right now though, because it's probably at his peak.
That's what we said before. Matt and I talked about this because like Elon Musk is the most obvious one. There's so much to rag on this guy and hate on him, but I mean, he literally might actually even be the president of the United States right now, if you're to believe the memes.
But this next the nomination is close to my heart. I've been thinking about this a lot. Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. Now, the NBA, I've been enjoying the product this year, but apparently fewer and fewer people have been. And I'll just put this from NBA the Dunk Central. Look, I don't know how much fact-checking awful announcing does. I don't know if they're quite like the New Yorker in that regard, but these facts we can take as sort of roughly representative of the conversation that's been had. Viewership in the NBA declining. ESPN's opening doubleheaders way down. Average 1.6 million viewers, down 42% over. Well, I mean, Victor Wemby was debuting last year, so okay, fine. But Suns vs Clippers, 1.5 million views, down from 50% from last year's comparable game. Now, I'll just say really quickly, fewer games. Have fewer games. But that runs into a certain profit consideration, so that's not really on the table. So they're trying all sorts of gimmicks. But the joke I made was perhaps he should lean more into cultivating gambling addictions in the people that love the sport that he's in charge of. Because that's what's really happened. There's a few stories here I want to highlight on this. This is from The Athletic. I believe the New York Times about The Athletic. This is I literally can't stop the descent of a modern sports fan. And I know somebody a friend of a friend who got addicted to online poker decades ago. Like,
Yeah.
In the wake of the 2018 Supreme Court ruling, which enabled states to make sports gambling legal, the industry has exploded. In 2023, the industry bought in a record $10.9 billion, up 44.5% from 2022, according to the American Gaming Association. And this story goes into one individual fan's story, and it's heartbreaking. The general paragraph here, though, a spokesperson for Gamblers Anonymous said that since 2020, men like Holt are increasingly common at their meetings. Before 2020, a person in their 40s attending a meeting would be the youngest in the room. Now it's the most common age range, a direct result of sports gambling. Experts say gambling problems develop over years, which is why Gamblers Anonymous is bracing for a surge from scores of people who have started betting on sports in recent years. Today we are opening meetings all over, specifically geared for males between 20 and 40. And the other day I was in a meeting with a 17-year-old, a spokesperson said, and the week before somebody was in a meeting with a 14-year-old. We are tracing this all back to the legalization of all this and the ability to gamble with your phone in your hand. And now, of course, I play NBA 2K very regularly. It is not hard for me to see the microtransaction sort of bait all over the my team and my career modes. As I mean, you buy packs of cards, and with various probabilities of getting good ones, and that being one small step to, okay, I can log on to this mobile betting site now and do a parlay. This is one of the best bits of writing that I've seen on this is by a guy, John Wilms at Real GM. Bradley Beal in the Pandora's box of widespread sports gambling. This was March of 2023. Last week, Bradley Beal was placed under police investigation for becoming too interactive with an angry fan. That fan, as is his prerogative in a society rich in certain strains of freedom, bought himself into misery by betting $1,300 on the live Washington Wizards game he was attending. So this guy basically got mad at Bradley Beal for costing him money and started getting in his face. And Bradley Beal had a physical altercation with him. Yeah. And Williams points out, probably not the last time something like this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And Wilms has this paragraph, which I just wanted to read. I'm a genetic descendant of multiple gambling addicts who had to know someone to place their bets and often ended up wishing that they didn't know anyone. One of them lost it all. So I know it when I see it, and today I see it everywhere. This is depraved, awful, soul-sucking stuff. It's bad, and it should make you feel bad. You are in a mud where you don't belong, day trading on the projected capacities of physically greater men. And every time you loudly blame a team or player for losing you money, you are putting a dangerous fallacy out into the world and taking part in a historical athlete-viewer dynamic that is, to put it mildly, not very nice to get into the depths of. Stop it, get some help. And one final thing, which I think kind of put this recently into my mind, Lord, was this horrible study by these folks that this fellow Michael Kolfed summarized this way. In states where sports gambling is legalized, intimate partner violence dramatically spikes when a home NFL team unexpectedly loses. So Adam Silver had leaned completely into this. I think I care most about basketball, to be honest. I'm sure that the other commissioners are just as guilty. But the thing with this is I think it points to something even broader than sports, which is this toxic thing. And I don't think it's unrelated that the money for nothing speculation thing comes with people getting sort of pathologies like addiction. And I think even if they didn't come with addiction, even if it isn't creating what I think is going to be a huge problem that we're going to have to deal with going forward, increased addiction, even if it wasn't doing that, I still think it's sick. I think it's sick to be able to make lots of money off of, predicting outcomes of sporting events. I just don't think it's great. But this is only going to hasten over the next 4 years, because I don't think a Trump administration is going to do anything to back this up. And I worry where we're going to be at. If it's gone from that big in 1 year, like a 40 to 50% rise in billions of dollars, we're talking about kids. We're talking about 20-year-old men figuring out their shit for the first time. This is a huge, huge problem.
I completely agree, and the explosion of gambling has made me sick. It ruins people's lives. It also ruins the sports in many ways. It ruins the way that people watch them, right? Where it's like a game doesn't matter, but you need some guy to get this many yards because it's going to help out your parlay or whatever. But more than anything, what this really does represent, because this is a kind of bipartisan thing, right? This is something that American politicians across the spectrum have allowed because they find it maybe to be a way to make some cheap money, to deal with the other rots in American society, particularly the ones that are caused by the fact that we don't tax rich people enough. So instead of taxing rich people, we find ways to bilk and take money from working class people, everyday folks in the society. But on top of it, just on a philosophical level, right? On a philosophical level, this is where a very perverted aspect of, I think, like American political thinking of American social philosophy really rears its ugly head, right? Which is this kind of, hey, everyone is able to make their own decisions. No. There are some things that are objectively bad for society. They're bad for people. They're bad for individuals. They're bad for families. And there are things that should be opposed. And a society should be able to judge itself, right, by how much it cares for the members of that society. And enabling a cancer like sports betting, especially the expansion of it that we've seen, where it's everywhere, it's easy, right, shows a way of thinking about folks as expendable. Right, like these are just people caught underneath the wheel, and it's from things like this to all other kinds of addictions that we see in society, where there is a lack of care for people, and there's a lack of willingness, I think, from folks who should know better, to be able to operate at the moral level and say, you know what, this is a bad life and we should be pursuing a good life. But there's a real anxiety, and that's from liberals, conservatives, but also people on the left too, who really are afraid of ever saying, hey, you know what, that's not a good way to live. We shouldn't be encouraging that. No. Yeah, that's something that people, I think, need to have a little bit more of a backbone about, because it really is turning your back on your neighbor. Right. And it's something that hopefully I think more and more people on the left who I think, it wasn't, remember when we first started talking about sports betting in a negative way, Matt, I mean, people would get very upset at us, right? Because, you'll be called like a conservative or something like that if you think that, hey, yeah, no, I am able to make a judgment about what's morally good and what is morally bad. But you know what? I think it's time for people to buck up because the social consequences are just too dire. And they're much worse than having a conversation with an annoying person about these kind of subjects.
Yeah, and it is, like you say, like the explosion of it, the marketing of it, it's all over everywhere. You hear it in commercials, like ESPN.
You hear it from athletes.
I mean, Jonte Porter, Michael Porter Jr.'s brother, is out of the league now for giving tips about his injury status over a Discord. And I haven't read the story. I saw it on the headline recently. And that's because he was in deep with the addiction of it. And it's just like, it's one thing, to go someplace, like you have to go to a bookie. And just by having to do that there's a certain like resistance and message you're getting to be able to do it and to like put money into like investors' pockets that have nothing to do with these guys that run these like betting sites. They're not down at like the guy down at the taking bookies. They're sitting in their giant mansions watching how much money people place and how big of a skim they got. It's really nasty.
It's a return to such a horrible part of American history. I mean, like the lottery for a long time. Not saying that it's not now, but like it used to be even more of a grift than today. And it was just something that you read like stories, from like the early 1900s about the United States and like the social ills of the lottery. And you're like, man, that's a terrible thing. How could people allow this to go? Well, we're watching something like that happen right in front of us right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Lord. Well, we got to reset because is it time for our big boy?
I think it's the big boys, maybe final big moments.
We'll see if it is, we were debating whether or not to put him on. But, one thing that we wanted to make sure that we did with the bump steer, because remember, the bump steer is not just the most recent bad characters. It's a look at the entire year. And this might be our only chance, Matt, to maybe take a little victory lap on this because we didn't really too much when it happened. But there were some people who believed that a little scrappy governor from the great state of Florida might be able to knock Donald Trump off of his throne. Matt and I were very, very pessimistic of that from the get-go. But a lot of people really thought that he was going to be able to squeak through. And he didn't. And he's truly embarrassed himself. And maybe to get us started, Matt, I want us to take a little bit of a walk down memory lane, remembering DeSantis's beginnings and see where he's at now. So this was Ron DeSantis. This is 6 years ago when he first ran for governor, and he ran as the Trump governor. And this is the ad that he put out.
Everyone knows my husband, Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
It is so funny that guy had to go on and try to strike out from independents from Trump.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I mean, and this is why Donald Trump was able to completely dominate him. But, and even when he was running against him, DeSantis was very, very, timid about taking Trump on directly because, as Trump noted multiple times, Ron DeSantis or Ron DeSanctimonious, which did grow on me, I got to say. That the first
That's
couple
one
times,
thing I loved immediately. Like, again, I have an English degree, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I always thought DeSanctimonious was going to hit, and debatable, but maybe not one of his top tier bangers, but I thought it was good.
But this is Trump talking about Ron after Cowboy Boot Gate.
By tens of millions of, and I'm not wearing lifts either, by the way. I don't have 6-inch heels. Actually, the greatest moment of the debate when Ron DeSanctimonious was walking off the stage. And his feet, it's weird, because his cowboy boots. So they have a high heel outside, but inside you got a big deal going on. And he's walking like... No, he's walking off the stage like he's trying to balance himself. I thought he was wearing ice skates. You don't mind if I go off teleprompter like a lot, do you?
Love Cook a little bit.
So much more exciting. So much more. But the head of Hungary... A very tough, strong guy, Viktor Orban. Did anybody ever hear of him? Probably. They were interviewing him 2 weeks ago, and they said, what would you advise President Obama? The whole world seems to be exploding and imploding. And he said, it's very simple. He should immediately resign, and they should replace him with President Trump, who kept the world safe. And I'm not just talking the United States. China respected him. Russia respected him. North Korea respected him. And he used another word other than respect, who he said fear. But I don't want to use that word. If you look at what's going on right now in the Middle East and Ukraine, and you add it up, and we have somebody that has no clue what the hell is going on, you're going to end up in World War III because of this. No reason for it. Millions of people will die.
Just a good reminder there of... the insane reality that Trump was able to run as the peace guy.
Well, one other thing, when DeSantis was running against Trump, he had this dumbass DeSantis war room thing.
Yes.
And this is so funny because Trump won in part by moderating his abortion stance. I mean, I don't think that prefigures any type of policy. It's going to remain to see, how interested Musk is in giving evangelicals what they want or whatever. But here is this tweet. The new Trump says he will compromise with Democrats on abortion so that they're nice to him. Both sides are going to like me. Then he says it's a, quote, terrible thing. Babies with heartbeats are protected in Iowa, Florida, and South Carolina. Ron DeSantis will never sell out conservatives to win praise from corporate media or the left, or to win, because that's what Trump's always did. It's how he won in 2016, by saying like, he's like, we might have to have some kind of punishment for women who get abortions, and then also kind of dance. I mean, actually, he was more anti-choice in 2016 because, I mean, he's already stacked the Supreme Court and got rid of Roe. you can just moderate it away now and undercut, the main headwind that Democrats have been using. Yeah, like that was sort of exactly the thing that was wrong with Ron, and why we never thought he had the sauce, is because he never, despite, teaching his kid how to build the wall and reading Trump's books to him, never understood what was actually appealing about Donald Trump, was that he wasn't a fucking politician like his stupid ass. Trump is a rich guy. Everyone knows him as a rich guy who, like, even in that, yeah, you mind if I go off teleprompter? Still, he's slowed down a lot last 8 years, but he's still more genuine than 99.9% of, besides Bernie, I would say, more genuine on a microphone.
And there's some glorious moments from the DeSantis campaign, like the revelation that he liked to eat pudding with his hands. Three finger, they call it the 3-finger dip.
Yeah. Do you remember thigh food?
Oh yeah, could you mind? Actually, I love this story. You told my wife this story, and she couldn't believe it.
And I think, if my memory serves, like, this was like acknowledged and maybe even leaked by DeSantis himself. But he basically would, when he had girlfriends, would eat Thai food with them and would repetitively call it thigh food to try to weed out any women who would correct him on that.
Just a really insecurity.
Which is that's a interesting thing.
And when you hear that story, Matt, the cowboy boot gate 100% becomes more and more viable to me. That, like, he definitely was wearing lifts inside of his cowboy boots, which is
he totally was. I mean, the visual. If there's something wrong with that bootmaker, if that's not some sort of aid.
Yeah. Well, and also, honorable mention there too. I know Chapo had good reporting on the fact that Ron DeSantis allegedly raw dogged a flight to Israel. So before he went to meet with the psycho killers in that disgusting place, he sat there and just stared at the seat, maybe considering the fact that he was never going to be able to step into Daddy's. I guess Trump doesn't wear boots, but Daddy's boots, and was always going to play second fiddle. And now he's trying to suck up to Trump. We were debating about whether or not to do DeSantis because he might be in the Trump administration. But even if he gets a job, friends, he still is the bum steer of the year because he had to walk through shit in order to get Donald Trump's respect back. This is him just the other day saying the left finds Elon Musk speaking out against a bloated spending bill to be a big problem. Yet, when George Soros pours millions of dollars into electing leftist district attorneys who pledge to go easy on criminals, that is somehow democracy in action. Make it make sense. And I think this is a perfect encapsulation of somebody like Ron DeSantis because he is a social climber. He is disingenuous. And he's somebody who is looking at and trying to get in the good graces of who he thinks is the real president of the United States of America, Elon Musk.
Yeah. The go easy on criminals pledge. I think the Dems should probably phase that one out.
Yeah. Well, friends, what a year it's been. I'm
fucking glad it's over. I'm glad that campaign.
The first guy to ever say that on New Year's Eve. I'm glad this year's over. I'm looking forward to the next one. But I know
this shit out of here. Like, I'm glad there's not another presidential campaign for 4 fucking. Well, I guess what 2.5 years.
Yeah, well, it was the last one. You'll never have to vote again, Matt. You'll never have to.
No, I do appreciate Ryan Grimm came on the show and said, like, I think we're gonna have elections. It's not over. Yeah. I mean, look, things are going to deteriorate. You're going to be able to go punch a card, I think. And, whether some sort of Republican attorney general is going to say that doesn't count, stop counting that. That's, that's the thing is, like, 2000 happened. Like, how much of a democracy do we have?
I mean, this is the thing that stuff, even with Ron, is those freaks won.
Yep.
And we're worse off for it. But
I'm sure things are going to start getting better.
The what?
I'm sure everything's going to start getting better in 2025.
Well, regardless, friends, we couldn't do it without you. And I mean this sincerely. On the last day of the year, Matt and I have appreciated all the love and support and the community that you'll bring to us, both the people who watch the public shows and the people, especially on the other side. And you can join us at patreon.com/leftreckoning to keep this show going, because if anything, I'm not going to need it just mentally to get through what's coming these next few months.
Then there might be a power vacuum that we can sort of slide into maybe in 2026 or something. We'll see.
Yeah, there we go. There we go, friends. Well, everybody, seriously, have a wonderful rest of the year. We will be back in 2025 with new energy, a lot of new ideas, maybe some shifts happening with the program, really good ones. I'm really excited for everything that we've been putting together, really proud of everything we've done over the past few years, but I think we're hitting our stride, and it's only up, 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 up from here, friends. So take care. Happy New Year. Happy holidays, and see you soon.